have here an endpoint, a web service endpoint that retrieves all the widgets that is retrieving from a database, right? Records that have been permanently persisted in the database. So let's go to the client side and see what we have so far. So on the client side, we have a container at the top called the widget list. Well, let me see, index. All right, yeah. So it starts off with user list. The user list is just a component that when it loads, it on component did mount. It goes off and fetches the users from a web service. Obviously, ideally, this would be implemented in a static user service, right? You would not actually do a fetch right here, right? You would implement it in a reusable user service singleton. And as it fetches it, when it returns, right? It parses the body that comes back from the service, and then that returns a promise, right? Which we then take out the users from that promise, and then set the state with the users that came from the service. Okay, and then that users is an array that we iterate over, and create line items for each. Okay, that line item just displays the username and the user ID. These are all hard-coded on the server, right? It also provides an on-click that allows us to select the user. If we click on that user, we up here in the select user, we just set the state of the selected user. Initially, it was empty, right? There was no selected user. But notice that selected user is being used as a condition to load the next component. If there is a select user and there's an ID, then also load the course list. Right? And then I pass to the course list, I pass the user ID of the selected user. I pass in the user ID. The user ID is then used in the componented mount of the inner component, right, of the component list, of the course list, to again use the user ID that is being passed as a prop as a property, and to fetch the courses for that particular user. If you're using a session, you instead would use a user ID that is in the session. Right here, I'm passing the user ID right in the URL. Right? If you're using the session, then you would use the session that you've logged in. Right? There's no need to pass the ID. This is more stateless. This one allows you to have the server be stateless, right? And typically would have a smaller footprint, and it would scale a little better, right? So it wouldn't have to remember anything about you. Once it retrieves the course, it parses the course object from the body, and it provides the courses in this promise, which I set the state, and then I use it to render. I use it to render the courses, and I also have a select, so that when you select, I have a course that's selected, which is then used. It's then used to render the modules. Right? Notice that the module I'm passing both the user ID and the course ID. Right, so that it could pass into to the server enough context, right, that it can navigate from the user down to the course down to the modules. Right? In the relational database, actually, we won't need to pass in so much context, right, because each child would have a reference to its parent. So each parent will know. Each child will know who's the parent. There's no need to pass in all the context, right? So we will need to refactor this a little bit. So the module list, I repeat the same exact thing. I use the course ID to fetch all the modules, right? I render the modules, and as I click on the selected module, I pass in all the information down to the lesson list. Lesson list retrieves the lessons for a particular user, course, and module. right? And then the lessons that come back, I use them to render them again. It just goes on and on and on and on until it gets to widgets. Okay. Now for widgets, it's a little bit different. Right, down to the topics. In the topics, it's a little bit different because the widget is not going to use the standard default state management of React. Instead, it's going to use Redux. Okay, so that part should be a little bit different, right? I believe in previous assignments you had courses, lessons, and whatnot, all that implemented using the standard out-of-the-box React state management, and then widgets you're using reducers, right? You're using Redux. So this is slightly different. Here we have a widget list container. Notice that there's a store here that is providing the state for the container, for the widget list container. I am passing information about context, right? User, courses, modules, and whatnot. Okay. Here I create the store up here with a particular reducer. This is the widget list container. The create store. Let's see. Let's look at the reducer. Reducer is pretty trivial. It doesn't really do much. What does happen is that what does happen is that the widget list container loads the widget list. So what happens is that first the widget list is loaded, right? The widget list loads, and on update, it immediately dispatches, right, on a dispatch, a load widget, right? So this.props.load widgets. That means that this is a function that is being passed as a property, right? So that the component can call it from the properties. Yes, it's not a function that is in here locally. So what it does is that it calls load widgets, and notice that this is a dispatch to properties mapper, right? Right, there it is. There's my load widget. And what it does is that it takes the arguments that was passed in as properties, and it uses that to fetch the widgets and then dispatch that to the reducer, the widgets that came back from the server. Right? It dispatches the reducer, passing the type of the action as load widgets, and the actual widgets that came from the server, it dispatches them into the reducer. So the reducer just is pretty trivial. It just takes those widgets that came in the action, and then it provides it as the new state, widgets action.widgets. Right? This gets fed into the state to property mapper. Right? So this state.widgets is the widget state that we just generated. Right? And it maps to a property called widgets, which is going to be then connected to the widget list, to a property called widgets. Right, so if we go into the widget list, the widgets is in the properties. There it is, right? Okay, so it's the reducer who's providing that list of widgets, being provided by the dispatcher, being provided by the component did load. Okay, make sense? All right. So it iterates over these widgets. So it's coming from the server. It is coming from the server. Everybody okay? All right, so what we want to do, we want to start ripping this part here. This is how we're fetching. This is how we're fetching the widgets right now. Right, from where? We're fetching it from right here. It's this call right here. It's that call right there. See that? Which is using our old way of looking for the widgets for a particular topic. Yes? We're trying to replace this. For now, let's replace it with something really simple, the API widget. Okay? Let's do that. All right, so let's see. So first of all, before we replace it, we want to make sure that what we retrieve here, let's see the query here, network. And so here's Alice. courses, modules. Oops. Okay. And here's our call to the widgets. Oops. Oh no. What happened? Did I break something? It was working. Anyway, so we want to replace this call with this call right here, right? API widget. All right. So let's do that. Let's do that. Let's go to the client side, and we're going to replace this call, this URL. It'll just be what? It'll be URL. It'll be this http://localhost 8080/API/widget. Meaning, forget whatever I had for the URL, right? Just use this instead. Okay? And that should return the list of the widgets, of all the widgets. Okay, so let's try it again. What the heck? 0? Oh, I know what might happen. Let's see. Widgets, topic lists. Topic lists. Oh, probably this is coming back as 0, which is a valid ID. But 0 in JavaScript is falsy, right? So if ID greater than and equal to 0, let's see. There we go, right? So those are the 3 widgets. Those are the 3 widgets that are coming from the server. See that? Those are the W1, W2, and W3 that are coming back from the server, right? So we have it connected. Notice that it's always returning the same thing regardless of the topic, right? Because we haven't connected those two yet, right? We're returning all the widgets all the time, right? We're not handling yet the relationship between a topic and a widget. We're always returning. We're making this call, right? We're making this call to the find all widgets. Oh, this is pretty cool. It's got into a loop. Why are you in a loop? Right, yes, we have to handle that. So what probably is happening is that in the widget list container, in the widget list, this load widgets, as it renders and the state changes, it calls again this component did update, right? So we have to make sure that as the state changes, we're not in the same state that we were 2 seconds ago, right? So for instance, if the topic changes, then yes, I want to fetch the widgets. But if it's the same topic, I don't want to have to fetch the widgets because I already have them, right? So what we might want to do here is make sure if this topic ID is not the same topic ID I just used 2 seconds ago. If it's not, then yes, load everything. Right? If not, don't load it. So the previous properties, dot topic ID. So if it's different, oops. If it's different, then yes, load it. Right? If it's the same one, don't load it again. So let's restart this. Okay. All right, users, course. Okay. There we go. Let's see. I should not be. Okay, it's not in an infinite loop anymore. Notice pretty cool that you see the queries that it's choosing, right, to retrieve all these widgets. You can, it's a great debugging tool, right, to see if it's exactly what you want going out to the database. All right. All right, so we have the widgets all by themselves. Let's focus now on connecting topics and their widgets, right? And we'll do that after the message, after the break.